After a 2-year legal war, Porsha Williams has officially won. The Real Housewives of Atlanta star just walked away from her divorce from Simon Guobadia with the multi-million-dollar mansion they once shared, over $1.5 million in cash, and a Rolls-Royce, while her ex-husband, deported and now living back in Nigeria, is left insisting from thousands of miles away that she's actually the one who lost. It's one of the most dramatic, twist-filled divorce resolutions in recent Housewives history, a saga that has everything: a whirlwind romance built on scandal, a brutal 2-year court battle, an ICE arrest and deportation, dueling claims about millions in debt, and a final settlement that, on paper, looks like a total victory for Porsha. Today, we're breaking down exactly what Porsha won, what Simon is claiming, the shocking twist that changed everything, and whether this win is as clean as it looks. Let's get into it. Let's start with the headline: what Porsha actually secured, because the details are genuinely significant. According to court documents obtained by TMZ and multiple outlets in early August 2026, Porsha Williams and Simon Guobadia finally reached a settlement resolving the last remaining disputes in their divorce, and the terms are overwhelmingly in Porsha's favor. First and biggest, the Atlanta mansion. Simon transferred his entire interest in the multi-million-dollar home they once shared to Porsha through what's called a quitclaim deed, a legal instrument that hands over all of one party's ownership rights in a property. In plain terms, Simon gave up any and all right, title, interest, estate, claim, lien, or demand whatsoever in the Fulton County, Georgia home. It's Porsha's now, completely, but it didn't stop at the house. Under the settlement, Simon also agreed that Porsha is entitled to $1,568,181.63, that's over $1.56 million, in reimbursement from his share of the property's equity. So not only did she get the house, she got a 7-figure cash payment on top of it, drawn from his stake in that very same property. And then, the cherry on top, Simon agreed to transfer the title of a 2021 Rolls-Royce Ghost to Porsha, a luxury car worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, signed over to her. The house, over $1.5 million in cash, and a Rolls-Royce. On paper, that is about as decisive a divorce win as you'll ever see, and there's a crucial detail that makes the win even cleaner: control. Under the agreement, Porsha now has full authority to refinance the home or sell it in a commercially reasonable manner without needing Simon's approval or an arbitrator's involvement. That matters enormously, and here's why. To understand how big that is, you have to understand what the earlier arrangement was. When the divorce was first finalized in June 2025, the ruling had allowed Porsha to remain in the home for up to 36 months, 3 years, while Simon covered the mortgage and housing expenses. But there was a catch. If she stayed beyond that period, she'd have been required to refinance the property, and Simon would have been entitled to 50% of the equity. So under the old deal, Simon still had a massive financial hook in the house. Half the equity was still his, and Porsha's control was limited. This new settlement erases all of that. By transferring his stake through the quitclaim deed and agreeing to the $1.56 million reimbursement, Simon gives up his 50% equity claim entirely. Porsha goes from sharing the home's future value with her ex to owning it outright, free to sell or refinance on her own terms. That's not a small upgrade. That's the difference between being financially tied to your ex-husband for years and walking away completely free. Now, to understand why this win is so satisfying for Porsha and so significant, you have to understand the absolutely wild story of how this marriage began. Because it started in scandal. Porsha Williams and Simon Guobadia debuted their romance and engagement in May 2021, and the timing was explosive, because Simon had only confirmed his split from his previous wife, Phelan Guobadia, just weeks earlier. Here's the part that sent Housewives fans into a frenzy. Phelan had been a castmate and a friend of Porsha's on the show. So when Porsha suddenly turned up engaged to her friend's very recently estranged husband, the internet lost its mind. Accusations of overlap, of betrayal, of the relationship starting before Simon's previous marriage was truly over. It was one of the messiest romance debuts in franchise history. The optics were brutal. Simon had been married to Phelan for only about 1.5 years. They announced their split, and within mere weeks, Porsha and Simon went public with an engagement. To a lot of fans and castmates, the timeline simply didn't add up, and it cast a shadow over the entire relationship from day one. Porsha faced accusations that she'd betrayed a friend, and the whole thing became a defining Housewives scandal, the kind of origin story that made plenty of people quietly predict the marriage wouldn't last. In hindsight, given that it collapsed in 15 months and ended in a 2-year court war, those skeptics look pretty prescient. And Porsha leaned all the way in. At the time, she declared, "We are crazy in love. I know it's fast, but we are living life each day to its fullest. I choose happiness every morning and every night, tuning out all negative energy and only focused on positive wishes. He makes me so happy, and to me, that is what matters most." They married in November 2022 in 2 glamorous ceremonies. They became a globe-trotting power couple. It looked, for a moment, like the fairy tale Porsha insisted it was. It was not a fairy tale. The marriage lasted just 15 months. In February 2024, Porsha filed for divorce, just months before filming began on season 16 of Real Housewives of Atlanta. And what followed was not a clean, quick split. It was a 2-year court battle marked by tension, messiness, and genuine hostility. Simon did not go quietly. He was denied an appeal of the divorce filings. He even levied defamation charges against Porsha, claiming she had sought to ruin his reputation through her version of the events that led to their split. This was a war, fought across courtrooms and social media, for 2 full years. Which is exactly why the final settlement, with Porsha getting the house, the money, and the car, lands as such a decisive victory. She didn't just win. She won after a grueling, drawn-out fight against an ex-husband who contested her at every turn. But here's where the story takes a genuinely shocking turn. The twist that completely changed the balance of power in this divorce. Because in the middle of all this, Simon Guobadia was arrested by ICE. Immigration and Customs Enforcement detained Simon in Lumpkin, Georgia. This, despite the fact that he had reportedly lived in the United States for 42 years. After a roughly 4-month stay in a detention center, Simon Guobadia was deported to Nigeria. He is now, as this all gets finalized, living back in Nigeria, thousands of miles from the Atlanta mansion and the American courts where his divorce was playing out. Think about how dramatically that changes the dynamics of a divorce. Simon went from being a wealthy Atlanta businessman, fighting his ex-wife on home turf, to being deported to another continent, litigating a divorce from abroad, unable to be physically present. It's genuinely difficult to fight for a Georgia mansion when you've been removed from the country entirely. Whether or not the deportation directly influenced the settlement terms, it undeniably reshaped the entire landscape of the case. Porsha was in Atlanta, in the home, with her lawyers. Simon was in Nigeria. That is not a level playing field, and the final outcome, with Porsha securing the property outright, reflects a case that tilted heavily in her direction after her ex-husband's removal from the country. And the deportation carried its own layer of drama because Simon had lived in the United States for 42 years, an extraordinarily long time to suddenly face removal. His detention in Lumpkin, Georgia, and his roughly 4-month stay in a detention center before deportation became their own painful chapter. From Simon's perspective, his entire American life, the businesses, the home, the marriage, unraveled in a stunningly short span, culminating in his removal to a country he hadn't lived in for over 4 decades. Whatever the legal specifics of his immigration case, the human reality is stark. A man who spent his entire adult life in America found himself deported in the middle of a contentious divorce, forced to fight for his assets from across an ocean. It's a genuinely dramatic downfall, and it's arguably the single biggest reason the final settlement broke so decisively in Porsha's favor. When one party literally cannot set foot in the country where the marital property sits, the negotiating leverage shifts almost entirely to the other side. Now, in fairness, Simon Guobadia is not going quietly even now, and his side of the story deserves to be heard, because it's where that dramatic 8 million figure actually comes from. Despite the settlement clearly favoring Porsha, Simon took to the internet to insist that he is the real winner and that Porsha is actually on the losing side. His central claim, that the mansion Porsha won isn't a prize, it's a liability. Simon has claimed that the property carries around $8 million in debt, and that by taking the house, Porsha has actually inherited that enormous financial burden. In his telling, he didn't lose the mansion. He offloaded a debt-saddled property onto his ex-wife and walked away free. He publicly celebrated his freedom, framing the entire outcome as him escaping a bad asset, while Porsha got stuck holding it. So which is it? Did Porsha win an incredible multi-million-dollar prize, or did she inherit an $8 million anchor? The truth is probably somewhere in between, and it comes down to the math on that house. Here's the thing. Real estate can carry debt, mortgages, liens, loans against the equity. If the mansion is worth, say, a certain amount but has millions in debt attached to it, then the actual value Porsha won is the difference between the two. This is precisely why the details of the settlement are so smartly structured in Porsha's favor. Remember, she didn't just get the house, she got the $1.56 million equity reimbursement and full authority to sell or refinance without Simon's involvement. That combination is key. If the house does carry significant debt, Porsha now has the cash cushion and the legal control to refinance on better terms or sell the property to clear those debts, exactly as she sees fit, without her ex-husband in another country able to block her. Reports note explicitly that she retains all rights to refinance or sell the house in order to clear any lingering debts, without Simon's approval. So even if Simon's debt claim is accurate, the settlement was clearly designed to give Porsha the tools to handle it on her own terms. And let's be honest about Simon's "I actually won" social media victory lap, because there's a very human, very recognizable dynamic at play. A man who was just deported from the country he lived in for 42 years, who lost the house, who agreed to pay his ex-wife over $1.5 million, and who signed over a Rolls-Royce, is now insisting from Nigeria that he's the real winner. That's the posture of a proud man doing damage control on a genuinely tough outcome. Maybe there's real truth to the debt claim. Houses do carry debt, and it's a legitimate factor. But the overall picture, Porsha in the mansion with the cash and the car and full control, Simon deported and paying up, is not the picture of a man who won. It's the picture of a man saving face. Let's put this in the context of Porsha's larger story, because that's what makes this win genuinely meaningful rather than just a tabloid tally of assets. Porsha Williams has been through the ringer when it comes to marriage and money. Her first high-profile divorce, from NFL player Kordell Stewart back in 2013, reportedly left her in such financial straits that she moved back in with her mother to get her finances in order. She built herself back up from that, becoming one of the most successful and enduring stars in the entire Real Housewives franchise, an entrepreneur, an author, a genuine businesswoman. So for Porsha, this Guobadia settlement isn't just about one house. It's about a woman who once had to move home to her mom after a divorce, now walking away from a far messier, far more contentious divorce, with the mansion, the money, and the car firmly in her possession. It's a full-circle moment. The woman who lost big in her first divorce won big in this one. And Porsha has been candid about the genuine emotional toll this whole ordeal took, which is worth remembering amid all the talk of houses and Rolls-Royces. Speaking to People in 2025, she described the heavy emotional burden she carried throughout the long divorce. "You go through different stages," she said. "You have that anger. This wasn't a painless victory. It was a 2-year slog through anger, hurt, public scrutiny, and legal warfare, layered on top of the original scandal that started the relationship and the shock of her ex's deportation. The assets she walked away with came at a real emotional cost. And notably, Porsha has moved forward in her personal life. She is now reportedly dating a woman, Patrice Sway McKinney, signaling a genuine new chapter beyond the Guobadia saga entirely. So let's zoom out and appreciate the full, wild arc of this story, because it's honestly one of the most cinematic divorce sagas the franchise has ever produced. It began with a scandal. Porsha engaged to her friend's estranged husband weeks after his previous split. It became a glamorous, globe-trotting, 2-ceremony marriage. It collapsed after just 15 months. It turned into a bitter, 2-year court war with appeals and defamation claims. It took a genuinely stunning turn when Simon was arrested by ICE and deported to Nigeria after 42 years in the U.S. And it ended with Porsha securing the mansion, over $1.56 million in equity reimbursement, a 2021 Rolls-Royce Ghost, and full control to sell or refinance, while her deported ex-husband insists from another continent that she actually lost by inheriting his debt. You genuinely could not script a more dramatic reality star divorce. The bottom line is this: whatever Simon says from Nigeria, Porsha Williams walked out of this marriage with the house, a 7-figure payout, a luxury car, and, Most importantly, her complete financial independence from a man who fought her for 2 years. Even if that house carries debt, she now holds every card needed to deal with it. The ownership, the cash, and the unrestricted right to sell or refinance on her own terms. That's not the profile of a loser. That's the profile of a woman who came out on top of a genuinely brutal fight. Simon can celebrate his freedom all he wants. Porsha's the one holding the keys to the mansion. For Porsha Williams, who once had to move back in with her mother after a divorce, who leaned into a scandalous romance and paid for it with 2 years of legal warfare and a mountain of public judgment, this is vindication. She bet on herself, she fought the fight, and she won the house. And whatever comes next, she gets to walk into it as the woman who beat a 2-year divorce battle against a deported ex-husband and came away with the mansion, the money, and her freedom intact. Drop a comment and let us know. Do you think Porsha genuinely won, or does Simon have a point about the debt? And are you rooting for her new chapter? Like, subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.